Next thing I want to talk about in this video before we go into September is a lot of the things I've recently acquired. And I may want to open some things on here. But two of the things, and see, that's another thing, I cannot, when I order something, it has to come in at this house, because part of the reason I moved with my dad was so that she wouldn't be able to confiscate my packages and punish me, like a child that gets my toys taken away from me, for being bad. So I have my things come here. But the downside, of course, is that I cannot see those things and leave accurate reviews because, months could pass. She basically holds me hostage. And it's like she comes over and kidnaps me, so to speak. She forces me to get in the car and go with her, go to her house. I can't have my own car. I can't come and go as I please, even though I'm more than capable of driving. I have to stay at her house, and at the same time, I also have to be grateful to her for wanting anything to do with me to the point where she would do that. You know what I'm saying? Because I have no friends and no one else in my life but my dad. I should be grateful to her, no matter how, she goes about doing it, because she actually wants to spend time with me. And of course, she's my mother. So anyway, I'm not allowed to have my car, and I just don't feel at home. But, two of the things that came in were these dolls. A Rapunzel, a little girl Rapunzel, shouldn't have bought it, but I got an offer, and little Flynn Rider. And her hair was terrible looking, but isn't it beautiful and golden? I put some fabric softener and shampoo in it, and it looks beautiful, but it was a mess. It was literally Tangled, like the movie. And I washed their clothes by hand. Well, that's one thing. Two other things I got in the mail were this Aladdin and Jasmine. Aladdin and Jasmine, a different version. This is Hasbro. This is like a 2017 Aladdin doll, which I like him better because he's not like half naked or pretty much naked under a vest and a pair of pants with bare feet. He actually has shoes, and I like how they have built-in shoes. And the other thing I like is how they were only 10 inches. That's always very special to me. When a doll is below average height, because on the 1/6 scale, I think of an 11-inch doll, which is really what Barbie is without her high heels, as being about 5'6". And a 12-inch Ken doll, really he's more like 11 3/4, as being about 6 feet tall, or more like 5'11". So I really cannot relate to the typical blonde, blue-eyed 5, 6, or 7 tall Barbie, or even the 5'11" Ken, because I'm a little shy of 5'4", and that's why I'm just so drawn to like teenage looking dolls, or shorter dolls, because I wish that were more common for them to be. See, she's less than 11 inches actually, so they're relatively short, little bitty short people. And I like, she's got another glittery princess dress, and so does she. And she, let's see, she has a complex story. There was this resale shop, and that's another thing. Like I say, there are pros and cons to both places. I go to my mom's house, I get the advantage of shopping in the real world. I come back with my dad, and I can, get things in the mail that day when they come in. And it's a different type of shopping, even though he frowns about it. So, it's still shopping, but in a different way. These dolls have a very unique story. See how she's short? She's another short doll. Well, this is Wendy Darling from Peter Pan. It's a modern Wendy. Oh my gosh. gosh. Well, there's this resale shop. I'm not going to say the name. But they sell cheap dolls at a discount. And they're almost always girls. Almost never find a male doll, of course. But they're cheap because they are secondhand. And they probably came from a donation. Usually when someone dies, like if it's an old person who dies usually, or people who donate their stuff when they can't sell it for various reasons at garage sales. People donate stuff, like if they're moving. So people donate to this resale shop. And these dolls in this toy bin are on clearance, discounted dolls, because they're often in horrible shape. Some of them are barely recognizable as the character they're supposed to be, but this clearly was Wendy. I was obsessed with Peter Pan for long enough growing up to know. They're often naked, and they're just in bad shape. Their hair is all tangled up, and, they're just sad dolls. The kind that on eBay would come in a lot or a group. But this doll right here, most people wouldn't have seen much value in her. I liked her because she has brown hair and brown eyes, and she's short. She's actually a little shy of 11 inches or so, but she's like a cheap knockoff Barbie. And you can tell because she's hollow-like. But she had a smiley face necklace. And this hair was just horrible before I tamed it. So, and her feet were all bitten. Like someone bit her feet, which is so common. That's why I say, dolls shouldn't be for very young children. And so I put her some shoes that had smiley faces and a sparkly pink dress so she can be like this doll. Well, this doll was a Wendy in a dress that she was probably not meant to go in. She was probably in her blue nightgown. But what I like about this dress is it has fleur-de-lis. And if you knew what state I was in, you'd know that the fleur-de-lis around here is kind of like the Texas Star. It's symbolic of the state. A lot of stuff has fleur-de-lis, especially in February and March. So I like the fleur-de-lis dress, the heart. That's probably for another Disney princess. Not sure which one. But it's Wendy in a different dress. And all my life I've thought, I've never liked it the way they make dolls of Wendy and Tinkerbell and even, Peter Pan. Like they'll make him the one token boy. Peter Pan will often be the token boy. And you'll have Wendy and maybe a Tinkerbell. But why, oh why they don't make a doll about this height on the 1/6 scale? See, this is more the 1/5 scale. Why they couldn't make like a Todd doll of John, or maybe, really John would be like more like this. And a little doll like this of Michael, like a Tommy doll, or a, Chelsea boy doll of Michael. Is something I've never understood. Why doll makers have just always omitted John and Michael. I guess I understand somewhat, just like all the boy dolls. They're not really an easy sell. They're a hard sell. And you would almost have to change something about them, because I guess a lot of parents do have a problem. It's almost like if I didn't know better, I'd think Disney has just always had an agenda, though it never was as outspoken in the past. They were never like as overt about it. They were much more covert. They become increasingly overt. about this agenda to feminize the image of boys and men. Um, like show children images, really all children's networks. It's almost like they've always had gay people, whether or not they were out. Sorry, I heard a noise. But they've always had gay people probably involved in a lot of these cartoons. And while it wasn't until recently that they could have anything somewhat overt about that, they've always wanted to slip things under the radar. Annoying trucks, I swear, all day long. They've always wanted to, how would you say, subvert masculinity in some way by slipping things under the radar. That in real life boys wouldn't normally like that or want to look like that. Just like with Odd Parents. For instance, Timmy on Odd Parents wearing a freaking pink T-shirt. Why the hell it couldn't be another color? Like orange or red. Why they have to have these stupid sissified colors on male characters is something I've never understood. It's like, why? Why do that? If boys generally don't wear pink, peach, and purple, basically the pastels of the warm rainbow colors. They can wear neutrals, they can wear like the colors in the middle of the rainbow in any concentration. But they don't wear pink, peach, and purple. Okay, so if that's true, and you want to create a cartoon character that's a boy or a man, why would you violate that is what I don't understand. Why did Chucky on Rugrats have to have freaking purple glasses? And that's why a lot of times when I color things, I will sort of round the color, so to speak, to the nearest more masculine shade. Sort of masculinize the color by tweaking it slightly. And what I mean by that is like, if in a cartoon a boy wears something purple, well, you could make it blue or black or, maroon. And if it's pink, you could make it red or white or orange. If it's peach, make it orange, just brighten it up a little bit. Round it to the nearest masculine color, so to speak. If it's close to a more masculine color, just change it slightly. You know what I'm saying? Like Chucky with blue glasses, dark blue glasses. Or Cedric and Sophia the First with a robe that's almost black. Or Timmy on Odd Parents with a red or orange shirt. And like if it's a very light pink, make it white. But like with John and Michael on Peter Pan, I feel like, that was their old-fashioned version of that. They couldn't have people being expressively gay, but they could show children images. Now I realize, pink wasn't quite so feminine of a color, before the Barbie Association. But, they could show children images of, a boy wearing pink. Or in John's case, a boy wearing a nightshirt that looks like a freaking dress. Or you could put these wizards and sorcerers, like Cedric, everywhere, like Arthur in Sword in the Stone, and have boys with sort of longish hair that needed a trim. And have boys and men wear things that were not dresses, but could almost pass for them. You know what I'm saying? Baggy shorts, baggy shirts that come way down, longish hair, and just certain effeminate features, especially on antagonist, that they could use to soften male characters in a covert way. In their world, nobody comments on it. But they've always wanted to do that, I feel. And so because of that, you really can't have a lot with John or Michael. There isn't much you could do with them. you know, to make them more marketable. So as a result, all the merchandise ends up with just Wendy, well, the dolls in particular, just Wendy and, you know, Peter Pan and, you know, Tinkerbell and all them. There's just really no way to make a boy character marketable, you know, especially John. Now, Michael, to a lesser extent, I guess he could be marketable if, you know, they could switch the color of his pajamas to blue or white or yellow or any other color but pink. But John, you know, he would have to be recreated in such a way that he wears like pajamas or, you know, something that isn't a nightgown or nightshirt or whatever you call it. Because it's just unrealistic to expect that anyone, you know, would want a doll of a boy depicted in such a way. And that's a shame, you know. I mean, they could have done so much with the character besides that. You know, they could have had him wearing so many other things besides a nightgown or nightshirt. But they just felt that need, you know, to put that in there, you know, that boys can wear nightshirts, boys can wear pink, boys can, you know, do things that you would normally think of as girly and still be seen as boys. So anyway, enough about that. So the other doll that I got, which was actually a birthday gift, is this Cocomelon JJ. And he was on clearance.
Let's play together.
And he was on clearance because he didn't have his original pants. So much more wholesome than Tommy. You know, he's wearing like built-in underwear of sorts with Cocomelon on it instead of a diaper. But he's a baby somehow. And I like him because he has blonde hair and brown eyes. And the reason he was on discount is because he was missing his original pants and shoes and a bowl of peas with a spoon that would have come with him. And he still works. So, those are some clearance dolls. And I don't think I'm going to unbox anything, but that's a lot of the stuff that I got while I was at my mom's house. And so, yeah, I like it when they're on clearance. But, you know, it's just such a shame that that there's just, you know, not enough people that really appreciate dolls. You know, and I'm pretty much one of the few people that wants to restore them, you know. People just don't appreciate them. They just see them as a toy to give to a child, you know, who is about this age or younger even. And something that, you know, little girls only play with for a short period of time. So, you know, before my throat starts to hurt, which I hope that's just from talking too much, I'll go ahead and post this video. Say happy September very soon.